All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Ustride. So today we're going to talk about how suspension robbed me from the exhilarating experience I craved. So when I first switched from a non-suspension EUC to a suspension EUC, I thought I was upgrading to a smoother, more comfortable experience. And don't get me wrong, it is. Now, EUC Chronicles did mention that he preferred non-suspension EUCs over suspension back then when they first came out, and I really couldn't understand his point of view at the time, considering the major benefits of having suspension. But let us hear his take on it.
No, nothing against the V11. Love the V11. It's a great wheel, solid wheel, safe wheel. It's just not as fun. This wheel is fun. And it was funny because I never even gave it a second thought when I was thinking about buying this wheel. You know, I think I already kind of had it in my head that if I was going to get an old school wheel with the specs that I was looking for, it probably wasn't going to have suspension. But transitioning from a suspension wheel to a non-suspension wheel, for me, I didn't have any issues. I actually, to some degree, prefer the non-suspension wheel. I don't know if it's because of the feeling of more control, more stability. I can't really put my finger on it. I just know that this feels great.
And he's right. Now, for those of you who have a suspension EUC, you know that the suspension absorbs the bumps, the dips, the cracks in the pavement like they're nothing. So something you're going to hear me talk about in the video is the one-to-one relationship with the wheel to the road. And that's all due to the suspension. Obviously, with the suspension, there's not necessarily a one-to-one relationship experience. It's maybe a 1 to 2 to 3, whatever. All right? So what that means is when you get on this suspension, the moment you jump or you hit a bump, right, that force is transferred into the suspension, all right, through the machine, through the frame, to your legs. That's a whole lot of loss in terms of feedback, right? Feedback from the road. So you're not really getting that immediate or one-to-one feedback that you typically get on a non-suspension wheel. That alone eliminates a ton of fun. Of course, we all have a different definition of what fun is, but in my case, since I'm a street rider, I like that one-to-one ratio feedback. Now, compare that with a non-suspension EUC. Jump too hard and you're breaking this pedal, because there is a one-to-one feedback ratio here, and this is what makes it fun. Okay, so acceleration, when you accelerate, it's immediate. There's no buffer. With this suspension, there's at least some buffer. All right, and that's where the fun is. But you know what, guys, after riding for a while, I realized I was missing something crucial, something raw, something exciting, something frankly exhilarating. Then I did something radical, guys. I went back to my non-suspension EUC, and let me tell you, it was a wake-up call. You see, guys, on my non-suspension EUC, every bump, every crack, and every slight dip forced my body to respond instantly. My thighs got stronger, my braking reflexes sharpened, and honestly, I felt completely connected to the road beneath me. When I pushed above 42 miles an hour, it wasn't just about the power of the wheel. It was about my body's ability to work in sync with that power. It took skill, strength, and a split-second response to avoid wobbling out of control. And that tension, that was the thrill. The wobbles, all because of, it's right here. This muscle felt like it's been neglected for years. Now I've been riding my suspension EUC for 2 years plus maybe, and I'm telling you, it's made me a lot less powerful in my legs. I've become sleepy. My muscles are sleeping. Ooh. Oh, I just love the one-to-one experience with the road. Oh my God, yes. Now can you imagine before this was a daily occurrence, daily experience, and it was expected to ride like this with your knees crouched like this. In fact, we created whole videos on how to ride properly to absorb bumps. This is when suspension was not even an afterthought. Wasn't even a thought. But for us at the time, it didn't matter because we had this amazing, exhilarating experience. Oh, yes. Oh. Wow. This feels like a Ferrari, like a sports car on steroids. Oh, after all the babying we got from all that suspension experience, this just feels out of a bat out of hell. Oh, yes. Oh. Now I have to tame it all over again. There's a sense of control. There's a sense of rawness to this ride. A sense of control that's both terrifying and electrifying. Oh my gosh! Ah! Woo! Terrifying indeed. Wow! The wobbles result from the lack of muscle control. This is from years of riding suspension. Welcome to non-suspension thrill! Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm on a beach ball. This is wild. Break, break. Woo! This is wild. Oh my goodness. Goodness gracious. Holy smokes. I need to fix something. The pads need to be fixed. It can't keep up with my excitement. Oh my gosh. This is refreshing. Don't believe me? Go back to your non-suspension high-performance EUC right now. Yes. Yes. This is the Ferrari of the EUC experience. Now, don't get me wrong. You could still adjust your suspension EUC to absolute stiffness to prevent that bumpy, comforting ride that you're so used to in order to get that thrill. I will try it on my EX30 at some point, but for now, nothing compares. My only concern is being able to manage this thing at high speeds because of my muscles, which has been sleeping for years. Woo! Ah! Oh my gosh! Whoa! Woo! Ah! Yes! You know, I honestly thought that one day the suspension would make the riding experience of EUC so dull that we would be begging for the olden days of non-suspension. But on a more positive note, we have the old suspension. Yes, they're not supported anymore at the same level in terms of firmware, but with suspension you have the best of both worlds. You have suspension and you could always adjust it to non-suspension or remove the suspension altogether, because not only will you now have the raw power motor and the one-to-one experience with the road, but you'll have a more powerful motor in a more well-suited design. Let's go! Oh wait, hold on. Woo! Now, I have to say, it's a little hard to imagine that back then I used to ride this thing at 40 miles an hour without a beep, without a thought. But now, Oh my, now I am in tune. I am in thought mode. I'm thinking constantly. Oh my goodness. Woo. Crouching tiger. I can barely hit 45. I'm already feeling like I'm doing 50, but I'm only doing who knows what. Oh! Woo! Oh, look at that. Oh! Ah, my friends. It's safe to say the old machines are not going anywhere. Yes, they may not be supported as I stated earlier, but you know what? It doesn't really matter, does it? Because the thrill still exists. Woo. Oh my goodness! Oh, I need at least a month of riding with this in order to get back to where I used to be. Hitting a bump could lead to a potential slip, and yes, it's scary. But that's the point. It's a dance with danger, where skill and concentration are everything. In a way, I felt like I was rediscovering the sport all over again. Whoa! See, normally with suspension, I wouldn't think twice about this crazy bump, which could have resulted in a crazy crash, you know, causing severe damage to my bodily parts. But it's a trade-off. Do you want the thrill, or do you want the safety of the thrill? I want the thrill! Now, obviously, no one's ignoring the bumps or anything. As you can see right here, this is clearly unpaved road, handled quite well by my muscles. This little ride alone was equivalent to possibly a whole week of going to the gym. Time for some lunch, McDonald's. Why not? So guys, I would liken that experience to how we pretty much evolved from making your order at the counter to now ordering via kiosk. Yes, it's convenient. You get to choose your sandwiches, choose your nuggets, your fries, etc. You know what I mean? Very convenient. And then you pay accordingly. And then you wait for someone to call you. But you know what? It's much better to have a human experience. Indeed. Thank you. Maybe not. Maybe not in some cases. Maybe sometimes they do not want to see your face. I'm just going to sit here and think about what I just experienced. I want to reminisce and consider whether or not I should go back to suspension EUC or stick with the old school. Get into the crouching tiger position and brace. Woo! And just like that, I'm satisfied. Once again, it just propels me back to where I first started in the world of EUC. Initially, this was something that captured my attention merely because I found a video of one guy on the street, veering off into off-roading with one tiny wheel. And the exhilaration I felt that time was on another level. But since the advent of suspension, it didn't mean that it took it away. Suspension is a completely different experience altogether. Not to disqualify it in any way. It's just something that's completely separate. It's a completely separate experience than the non-suspension OG. And I think for that, we have the OG to thank, obviously, for the suspension EUC. But let's not be like every other form of technology and every other form of innovation. Let's not forget where we came from. This is the culmination of years of innovation, not to be replaced by the suspension EUC. The suspension EUC has this to thank for its existence. Let's come to agree on one thing here. It is the culmination of thoughts from many writers around the world, many YouTubers, reviewers, etc., who came together and said we needed something better. But I just hope that in your hearts that you don't think that because we did get something better in the form of suspension EUC, that it makes this all together worthless. Because it is not. All right, guys. See you on the next one. Happy riding. Remember this, guys? We used to challenge ourselves to go everywhere, regardless if it had suspension or not.